coming towards the end of our third.
We can't have been doing it for 3 years.
We have. This is episode 156, and there are 50 episodes a year. Yeah, that makes 3 years even by your math.
Welcome to Own It, Your Business and Your Life, with Nicola Cairncross and Judith Morgan. In this podcast, we're going to cover everything you need to embrace to become a successful entrepreneur, marketing, money, and much, much more. How to create a business doing just what you love. How to own it, your business and your life. This one will be fast, funny, feisty, and very lively. So sit back and enjoy the show. Hello, how are you?
Morning, I'm good. How are you?
So you've got a busy day. I've just been reading your Facebook post.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to get ahead, but it doesn't matter. It's absolutely fine. We're on not a normal day anyway. We're on a Wednesday, not a Thursday. So, you know, we're 24 hours ahead anyway, you could say.
That's a good way to look at it, Judith.
Yeah.
How's your week been then?
Well, I'm having a week of outings, which is quite rare for me.
Yeah.
You know, last Sunday I went to lunch with my brother and his wife and 3 children, and he's bought himself a Tesla motor car.
No.
Yes.
That's very forward thinking for your brother.
Well, actually no, because he also built his own house where they put the sort of heating in where the national grid pays you, not the other way round.
Okay.
Because his wife is a real planet saver. So it's not terribly forward thinking for them. It's quite normal for them. They're all about, saving the planet, basically. But they've been to a lot of sort of presentations at Tesla's UK headquarters, which are in Chiswick, and it's all really rather exciting. Apparently it only has a range. They didn't buy the bottom of the range. They didn't buy the top of the range. And I haven't seen it yet because it hadn't been delivered. But it only has a range of about 250 miles. I'm not quite sure what you do then. Do you just plug it in somewhere? I don't know.
Yeah. Sarah Starr's got one. And she drove from one end of the country to the other just to prove it could be done. And that was about a year ago. And she didn't have any problem finding places to charge it. Apparently even supermarkets are putting charging stations in now.
Well, I've seen a lot of charging stations for electric cars, but I didn't know the Teslas could use that. Because I don't understand. But apparently it does sort of charge itself a bit as it's going along. To be honest, I didn't really understand. But the other news at their house, which is perhaps more fascinating for us, is that he's helping 2 of his 3 children to buy flats in London because the prices on properties in London are in freefall.
Are they? That's
and flats which only in August were outside the top of my niece's range are now falling out of the bottom of her range in only 2 or 3 months.
Interesting you should say that, and I don't know how far we should discuss this given our earlier conversation, but a lot of people who I respect a lot are saying that there is a big sort of financial meltdown coming.
Yes, there is, which I'll tell you off podcast is good for me. But one of the first implications of it will be that there's a massive, what looks like a downturn, because everything that we know will be completely different.
Yeah, and the whole thing, London reacts first, doesn't it? Because that's where the international money goes.
Yeah, well, it's not really about that. It's about Brexit and how many of the people in the banking sector are taking their jobs and their London, for instance, has the largest population of French people outside of France. They're all going home and not buying flats here. So there's a big sort of pull out of the financial services sector in London, which, for instance, HSBC, my niece was saying, is moving to Birmingham and Dublin. I don't know why Birmingham, but anyway. So that's the news from there. So let me tell you about my other outings. Tomorrow I'm going out and introducing 2 people I know to one another. They're both Star supporters, so we've got to have a meeting. Get me. I'm going for a face-to-face meeting, a bit of networking. So hopefully they can do business with one another, and I'm just there to, introduce them. I'll probably shut up. I don't really know anything about. I don't understand what they are both experts in, so I will just leave them to, talk about that. I'll probably have a bit of toast and a cup of coffee while they're doing it. And on Saturday, I'm having an early supper with my best friends in the whole wide world, David and Jane, who are now enviably both retired and yet having more fun with their lives than ever. And I was going to see them because they're right by one of the Citizen M hotels that was having an event on Saturday about authors, and I was invited to go to it, and I thought, I don't think I can sit down after my bad back. I don't think I can sit down on a Saturday for another 8 hours. And also, to be fair, the agenda wasn't all that appealing, but I'm using it as an excuse to go and see my friends anyway. And they have a flat in London on the South Bank, and they have a house in the country, and they learn languages and new skills, and they volunteer. They have, they had busy and high achieving careers, and they have busy and high achieving retirements as well. So, and the other good news is, since the fall, despite the bruises, one of which is as big as a dinner plate, my knees are much better. So I've weathered my worst fear, and nothing really awful happened, and that's quite emboldening.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, when the worst things come to pass and you live through them, you think,
yes.
Okay.
Well, quite. Yeah. Anyway, tell me. That's my week. Tell me about yours.
Well, my week's been rather dominated by my new book, which is, honestly, I'm astonished at how leaps and bounds it's coming along in.
Do you mean the sci-fi one?
Yeah. I mean, when you think, I joined Write Club when I first got to Stupa last year with no idea of a book at all. I had a tiny glimmer of an idea in about January or February and just sort of sat on it and let it marinate a bit. When I sat down the last couple of weeks, I came across this snowflake method, which is it's a really interesting book because he writes a book to illustrate the principles of the snowflake method. So you actually watch the book coming together and at the same time, and then the last bit of the book just sets out the step by step. And I started sort of doing it, but I've got to. It was going to be quite autobiographical at the beginning because I couldn't imagine writing about anyone except myself because I'm such a narcissist. But as I've gone along, the story has evolved and it's becoming more and more of a complete fabrication work of fiction kind of thing. And that's quite liberating because it means you do absolutely anything, especially when it's a science fiction book because it's set in the future. And I sat down in a local cafe the other day. I thought, I've got to get out of the house. I've got to get away from the computer. So I took my notebook and I went and sat in a cafe with my phone. And I thought, I'll just start doing some research. You know me and research, but I'd started doing it. And I thought, one of the principles of this book is going to be that there's 12 keys that get scattered when a spaceship crashes on Earth. And each key is picked up and one or two of them go into each religion. So I thought, okay, I know nothing about religion. let's see if I can find out what the world's religions are first, and then if they, what their tenets or principles or commandments are, and if I can find at least one or two in each one to turn into a secret key for happiness and fulfillment and a good life, etc. And this led me down the most amazing rabbit hole of Wikipedia I've ever come across. I mean, I ended up with a title for the trilogy. I ended up planning out the 3 books in the trilogy.
Hang on a minute. Suddenly one book's turned into a trilogy. What do you like?
Yes, because I realised I wouldn't be able to cram it all into one book, what I wanted to cover. So it all sprung from, and I was going Wikipedia and clicking links, and I ended up with all sorts of interesting things. Number 12 is very special. There's lots of different special things about the number 12.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know that. I mean, it's almost like I sort of subconsciously knew it, but didn't know it in my head.
Yes.
And it's just the most exciting thing, Judith. I was nearly exploding with excitement by the end of the day because I'd done so much on a book that only in January or February was just one idea about one thing. And it's just, I came away, I was taking pictures on the way. I felt exploding with creativity. It was marvellous.
And does the snowflake method only work for novels, or does it work for any book?
I think it would work for a book, like a business parable kind of book. Anything where you need to write a story.
It's got to be a story.
Yeah, because it very much covers the 3-act principles, which is, Act 1 is ordinary life. Something happens to the call to action. It's the hero's journey. And then the second act is where you build up to a disaster halfway through the second act. And then that changes how your character behaves and acts from then on.
Yes.
And then you build up to a second disaster, which tests the hero at the end of the second act. And then the third act is where the hero and the villain commit to seeing it through to the end, and they race to a denouement.
Yeah.
Good French word for you. Anyway, it's dominated my week, Judith.
Yes, well, I'm good. I'm pleased. So you've got a mahoosive hobby.
A mahoosive hobby. But what it's doing is making me want to take pictures as well, because I'll be doing that my week in 7 days. I forgot to do that yesterday. Yeah. I've got some lovely black and white pictures I've been sharing, and that was, that felt very creative as well. I was looking at things anew, trying to think of what would be good in a black and white photo.
Yeah.
So exhausting, quite exhausting.
Black and white is one of my favourite mediums, not just for a photograph, but I had a black and white telly for long after colour was normal, and I like a black and white movie as well. I like black and white. I don't know why I do. I do.
Oh, I don't like black and white movies at all. But funny old stick keeping a black and white telly after everyone else got colour.
Well, it was, when we say everybody else, when colour televisions were first invented, they were ghastly because everybody had the colour turned up far too high, and it was like the grass was, acid green, and everybody's face was like they'd had a permatan, and they weren't very good at the beginning, and I thought black and white was nicer. And also we used to hire tellies in those days, do you remember? And then you pay £3 a month to radio rentals, and
yes, I do.
A colour telly was, I don't know, 20 quid a month or something. I probably was hard up as 70 something, wasn't it?
Mid to late 60s. We had a telly quite early on, because I remember I was 61, born in 61. I remember at the age of about 3 watching the man walk on the moon on our telly.
Yeah. Well, we had to go up the officers' mess to see that. And I don't think, did we see that in colour? I don't think colour telly was, it might have been. I don't think it was. I think we saw it in black and white up the officers' mess on the big telly. Yeah.
Well, probably in America they had colour telly before us.
We had a telly at home, but, when you wanted to watch the man on the moon, you wanted to see a big one. When everybody got a telly in the UK, it was because of the coronation, which was 1953.
53, wow. Okay. Going back even further than my time now. This is only 50 years ago, children. If you're listening and you're under the age of 25, this was only 50 years ago that we did that telly. It's even more astonishing than the mobile phone revolution.
Well, I think the advances in our lifetime have been quite staggering, actually, haven't they?
We can now watch telly on our mobile phones in bed.
Yes, indeed. I don't go as small as a mobile phone myself. As you know, I go to a iPad. Funnily enough, when I left my brothers, because they half treat me a bit like their fourth child. As I was leaving, I think perhaps out of habit, they said, send us a text when you get home. Well, if only you knew what a faff it was. I'm sitting on the settee back here and saying to my mates, I'm 62 and I've got to send a text, to say that I'm home safely. And actually, it's quite a time-consuming business on my phone, and the mobile phone signal isn't great here. So it's a bit of a chew to have to send a text to say that you're home safely. It's quite funny, anyway.
Oh, my God. Well, I went into my local pizza place this week and said, I'd like to order a pizza, please, but for delivery. And I said, and can you deliver me with it so that you know where I live, so that when I start calling you during the winter for my pizzas, you know where to deliver them and I won't have to come out in the cold. And they did. That was really cool, wasn't it?
Yeah, that is cool.
Yes. So that's because you can't ring anyone in Greece, because either they don't understand you when they pick up the phone, or it's hard to ring people here.
Yeah, but as we know, with that couple we interviewed on the summit, ordering a pizza in a foreign country, Nicola, where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah, that's what I came up with, making them drive me home so they know where I live.
Exactly. If one wants a pizza badly enough, you'll find a way. And if somebody wants to sell a pizza badly enough, they'll find a way.
Exactly. I tried to draw a map with my name and phone number on it. They weren't having any of that.
I remember there was some arrangement where you sort of just passed the bridge and the bike stopped and you had to go out of the house and wave your arms or something like that.
Well, I'd rather not do that in the middle of the
week. It's all a bit low tech for me, to be honest.
It is. Yeah, it is. Yep. I like that about it, though.
It's not my issue anymore, because low carb, I can't have pizza.
Oh, good point. Yes. Anyway, I shouldn't be eating pizza either. What's fueled your fire this week, then?
Well, on topic with your new book, today is the 1st of November, so there's the opportunity to join in with NaNoWriMo, which I'm not going to do, not only because I don't want to write 50,000 in the month of November, but I don't want to write a novel. And whenever I've joined in on it before, I've never actually joined anything. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm not a joiner. But it is an opportunity to write 1,667 words a day. And I kept forgetting. People kept mentioning it. I kept forgetting. And I thought, well, shall I join in? What shall I do? And in the end, I decided, as you've read already, that I'm just going to write at length on my Facebook page every day, Monday to Friday, and possibly weekends too, if I feel like it. And I might just step up. I'm using it as a sort of slight step up on the content creation front. Might do the odd Lumen 5 video, which they make from your blog posts. I've got to blog a bit more. And might use Audio Boom to read snippets from my forthcoming book. Communicating in the written and the spoken word is and in my, what is fast becoming my favorite place, Facebook, specifically my Facebook page, that's what I'm going to make my November NaNoWriMo about. And I've got a bit more. As you've seen all of this morning, I've told you all of my news in that post that I know you've read because you've liked it. What's this job all about, Nicola? It's all about the clients. And yesterday, 2 clients in Small Business Big Magic left completely unsolicited, very long, positive pieces of feedback about me. One was a client who was joining up for her 3rd year, and she was sort of saying why. And one was an American client who's been there since the beginning, which we must be coming up on 4.5 years now. Wow. And she had gone for one of those intro calls with a sort of 10-figure coach person. Yeah. And had gone round the houses with, well, we've made an appointment, and what medium will we speak on, and what hour are we speaking? And my assistant, the VA, had contacted and said you couldn't have the slot you've booked, and she still didn't know whether she was supposed to Skype or Zoom or phone, and she had to pay for the phone call, and then the phone call didn't connect, and she just wrote a long thing about, I so much appreciate your process, which is simple and clean and works. And that was just such a nice thing. And then last Saturday, Kath, who listens to our podcast and is a favourite client, and we laugh a lot because we have a sense of humour in common. She was listening to the podcast, and I could hear it in the background because she left an audio comment on my, on a private message to me. She said, you can probably hear yourself in the background. I'm just listening to the podcast. I'm listening to talk about the chap who's going to write the foreword and how you think he was probably being a bit nice to you, and stop being so modest because you're epic. Wow. And so I've had 3 really nice pieces of feedback this week, unsolicited, and I use them, as you know, we use them in a business sense, but I also feel a little bit modest about them. And I thought, actually, what is the podcast all about? What is my work all about? It's about doing good work with my clients, and if they enjoy it and tell me that, then that's a result.
It is. Leads in very nicely to the client challenge of the week, which you don't know anything about yet.
No, but tell me what's fueled your fire first.
Okay, well, Nelson has lasted a month and a bit in Cubicle Nation. He's had enough already of working in the aviation industry.
Right.
And we had a long talk last night, and I tried. He's feeling very much that he's can't stay there. He absolutely hates it. He ends up doing Snapchats from work in the middle of the day, so he's bored. And I really think that he needs to think about this. I said to him, most of your friends are going off to university or college at 19, and they're going to be there for 3 years, and they don't even have to decide what they're going to do for a big grown-up job when they come out of that.
Yeah.
So you've really got to go ease up on yourself, because he's feeling very much the pressure that he wants to be heading in a purposeful direction. I said, how can you possibly know what a purposeful direction for you is yet? Because you haven't done anything yet, Nels. You've just worked in a pub and made some music. And you really got to think to yourself and, begin with the end in mind. Do you want to be rich? Do you want to make a difference to the planet? Do you want to lead a creative, fulfilling life? Decide what kind of a life you want to lead or what difference you want to make in the world, and then work backwards from there. And at this stage of the game, really, you can't know the exact steps to get there, but you can set off in the right direction. And even if you end up somewhere different that's just as good, it'll be fine. But what you've got to do is try loads of stuff. And you've got a fantastic opportunity here because you're living with your father. He's very, I'll talk about him in the later section as well, but they've both got a lovely place to live. They could go back to work at the pub both of them could go back to work at the pub. I've had these conversations with Phoebe as well. She was feeling very down this week. And I said, you both chose to leave the pub for things you thought were better. You made the right choice at the time. You could go back to the pub. It is flexible. You do earn well, and it is a very companionable, sociable job. Or you could go out and find things that would be perhaps moving you in the right step towards. So what fueled my fire about these conversations was the fact that it was what they were both saying to me, what would you do, Mum? And I said, well, you can't do anything till you know what the end in mind is. So it got me thinking about the whole end in mind thing. And even if how you end up somewhere different, it might be somewhere just as good, if not better. But you can't take any steps until you know what the end is. And funnily enough, one of my things has always been that I'd love to be a best-selling author. And who knows, this new book might be the thing that does it.
Well, I think that's pertinent because you are now, 56 or something? How old are you?
Yes, 56.
Well, you're finding a new direction at age 56. That's what I was thinking all the time you were talking. That a friend I spend a lot of time with at the moment is the same age as you, and her son is about 20 years younger. And both of them talk about purposeful direction. It's not for the rest of your life, Nelson, old love. It's just, what feels right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, he talked about becoming a property investor when he came over here, because we talked on the Sunbed a lot about the property market and everything. And I said, well, in that case, you really ought to think about becoming an estate agent, because it's, you get out there, you learn the market, you get to meet all the local property investors. You're bound to find someone who'll who'll perhaps mentor you. You'll learn, it's not even about the money. It's about the fact that you'll really learn.
And I think he'd be quite good at that as well, because he's quite charming and handsome, yes, and I think you need that. Has he passed his driving test?
No, not yet, but he's got a scooter.
Right. Yeah, no, but you need to pass your driving test, because what those nice, charming boys do as estate agents is drive you round to the properties.
Oh, that's right, yeah. Mm. But that's another thing. He does want a car, and he does want to pass his driving test. So I think that wouldn't be a bad move. And he said, well, actually, I've got a mate who's got an estate agent, and I think he was saying there was a job going. I said, so why don't you go and try that then? I said, even if you only last a month again.
But also you learn sales. You learn sales through just being nice and helpful. And so you get over the thing that selling is horrid.
Yes, it's about helping people move from a place they are now to a place they want to be.
And also, estate agents, like lawyers and some other group of people I've temporarily forgotten, are an easy target where the world doesn't like them very much. And if you can get over that, if you can say, I've done a stint in a job that everybody takes the piss out of, and I've lived to tell the tale, and I learned a lot of useful things, you won't be frightened of doing anything or trying your hand at anything ever after that.
Yeah, and the other thing he said was, what sitting in a job. I mean, he said it just felt endless. Bless him. And it would. It feels like prison, doesn't it? I used to go and cry at lunchtime. Some of the jobs I had, and he said, but what it has, it's really made him appreciate the joy of making music again. So he's been, creating more tunes. And I said to him, what about starting a podcast about dance music? I said, you could just have a chat with or interview people, starting with your mates at college and then working your way out from there, and just start a dance music podcast, because podcasts are getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Also, I think he'd be invited from there to run a radio show. I've got several clients and former clients and colleagues, including one who listens to this podcast, who do an hour-long radio show at their local radio station, and they're allowed to fill in whatever they want.
He's already been asked if he wants a radio show.
There you go.
He went off to Bali, so he didn't take him up on it. But
I'd go sniffing back round that again, wouldn't you?
Totally. Yes. He could even have a podcast that interspersed him interviewing dance music figures and him doing live mixes.
Yeah, well, definitely music. Yes, I tell you what, as well. I think we should stop for the moment using the word podcast and talk about radio show, because people don't really understand still what a podcast is. Right. Let's call it a radio show, because they understand radio, internet radio, audio. Podcast is still a kind of strange word, even to quite some techie people who don't understand how to listen or sign up for it. I'm at pains often when I'm sharing on Fridays to say, you can listen to this at our website, so they don't need to work out how to subscribe at iTunes.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, it fueled my fire, because it made me think about what would I do if I was starting again, if I was Nelson, how the whole thing about, beginning with the end in mind, even if you can't quite see what the end is, what shape it takes or what it looks like. Just think about how you'd like to feel at the end.
When I was his age, I just eradicated what I didn't like.
Okay.
Because I didn't know what my end was. I just didn't do things I didn't like. If I were him, I'd make more tunes and do what you love, because that's where the money comes from.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't worry too much about it. I think you're absolutely right. This purposeful direction thing, I don't quite get. I have, as I said, this friend who's obsessed with, if I'm not moving forward, and it's like, well, can't you just enjoy life?
Yeah, well, you're very different stance on that one to most people, Judy.
I don't think to most people. I think to some people. I think that. I don't think you can say I'm not driven. Historically, I've been very driven, but I don't have this sense of. I feel I'm living a purposeful life in quite a small way. Actually, what made sense of this to me was Roger Hamilton's group of, entrepreneurs, planet changers. I don't want to change the planet, but I love working with people who do want to change the planet. So it's, that's being part of that in a way that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
So, I'm still in that, helping people who do have a bigger vision than me. It's the whole same thing as legacy. Don't sweat it, Nelson. Just do what you love.
Exactly, and something will come out of that if you.
Yes,
because you'll put your 10,000 hours in, you'll get better than everyone else, and then you'll be able to choose what you do. Then
I think music's his thing, and the more he can be in that and doing that, go there first. If he's got to do something on the side, fine. But he's a musician first and an estate agent second.
Yes. And the audio boom thing. He, if the show took off and it got really popular, he'd earn advertising revenue from it because they put it on automatically, don't they? If you
yes, they do. Yes, they do.
Here at Own It, we personally believe that leaders are readers. But sometimes it's just not convenient to read and you'd rather listen instead. For listeners of Own It the podcast, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. A couple of titles we've picked out for you particularly are Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg or Crush It, Why Now is the Time to Cash In on Your Passion by Gary Vaynerchuk. To download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/ownit. Again, that's audibletrial.com/ownit for your free audiobook. You can pick one of the ones I've chosen for you, or you can choose something else. Enjoy your listen. So, Client Challenge of the Week sort of carries on from that, because what I wanted to do was talk to you about the podcast. What should we do with this section? Because we are struggling to come up with new client challenges the week and nobody ever sends us any.
Yep.
What are we going to do with the podcast, if anything, generally? Because it's not growing. It's staying steady, but it's not growing unless I spend money on advertising. Mm-hmm. I just want to have a talk about our goals for it, our aims for it, what we think about it at the moment, and specifically what we could put in this section instead. All right, let's discuss something quite scary first, even if you edit it out later. Yeah, all right.
What if we stop it?
Well, James Schramko has knocked all his podcasts on his head apart from his own, because he said that it was too difficult to round up the podcast partners. I mean, we're good like that. We turn up every week. He has to chase his down. He's simplifying and streamlining. And yes, you're right. We could just close it down, couldn't we? Because I could put the extra time into. But my only thing is, I suspect I wouldn't. I suspect the discipline of this podcast is very good for me, and I love the fact that we're creating great content, and we've got 600 to 1,000 listeners every week. I do get clients from it. I know I do, and I wouldn't do it. I don't know if I'd be so disciplined about doing it for my own podcast without you.
Okay.
But that's no reason for you to keep going.
No, I'm not ready to stop it today.
No.
But the thought did go through my mind earlier this morning. It's like, how much longer will we carry on doing that? What will be a natural end point for that? When might I want to give it up? What would we do instead, if anything? I was having, funnily enough, these thoughts this morning. No surprise, really, because we're all connected. But yeah, you're right, which is... to some extent, we're going through the motions. We always find something to talk about, even if not in the Client Challenge of the Week section. And we could go on doing that. But funnily enough, yesterday, when it got to the bit about who or what's impressed, I couldn't think of a single thing. And it's quite hard when you can't think of stuff to go in the sections, isn't it? I know that a lot of my clients enjoy it very much. And for now, that is enough to keep me motivated, because that, as you rightly pointed out, that is what I just said in what's fueled my fire. You know, when I know that I'm helping them and making them happy and making it easier for them to run their business and keeping connected with them, that is motivating for me. And that's probably why I show up every week, I think. I think you show up for different reasons. Not only is it part of your be everywhere online content thing, but you want that hockey stick quite badly as well, don't you?
Well, I just don't understand and this is a little bit of comparisonitis. I don't understand why in some of the masterminds I'm in, other people start podcasts and they are no better than this one, and, different topics, but no better in terms of engagement or interestingness. And they get thousands of downloads a week from day one. Why are we staying steady?
I think it could be the same issue that we always describe, which, when you are always amazed that, I think it's down to the business is what people need and hobbies is what they want. So, if we switch to talking about writing, which is maybe more in the hobby space, we might get a different listenership. I don't know that it would be useful for either of us, actually. But what I'm saying is those things are about what sorts of topics, not business. But, I find that business is quite a hard sell right now and has been for 2 or 3 years. So what are those ones about where people get thousands of downloads from week one?
Without saying any names, one lady in one of my mastermind groups has just launched one about, I don't even know what it's about. She talked about Google AdWords one week and she interviewed someone the next week. And she, it's really about online business, but she's getting thousands of downloads.
And does she have a big following that she could leverage?
I think she's got a following. I don't think I think it's sort of on a level with us. There's a guy called Tyrone who's just launched a property investors podcast in Australia. And he interviews property investors. And that's another small niche, you'd think, wouldn't you? But he's thousands and thousands, and it's grown in a huge hockey stick. I mean, to be fair, he does do a lot of promotion on it, and I could go and look at his list of things he does to promote the podcast. But
I wonder if that's the key, Nicola. Yeah, and I said to you the other day, didn't I, that our Facebook page for the podcast is very unloved, and I love Facebook pages. And actually, I put something on there this morning inviting them to join our group because it's easier for us to engage with our listeners in our group than it is on our page. And I wonder whether there's any point in me posting the content as a note on the page, which I put myself through every week, because I don't think the page is unloved. So
why don't we close the page and you stop doing that?
I think we could consider that, because I'm not thinking it's doing any good. And actually why don't we keep it going until December the 31st? And during those times, every week, I'll put join the group because we're shutting the page, join the group because we're shutting the page. Yeah. There may be a way of me messaging everybody on there, telling them that or something. I don't know. But
I think, to appeal to our listeners, if you just shared the podcast with one new person every week, we would grow our listenership, because our listenership isn't growing at the moment, and that's quite demotivating for me. But having said that, I do love to talk to you every week. The big thing that hangs over us, as you know, because you did it for 100 episodes, is finding a new topic for Client Challenge of the Week. Yeah, so perhaps we should change that section and just talk about what's going on in our marketplaces this week. What have you noticed?
Or we could just talk about anything, couldn't we?
Yeah.
But actually, I know some of our clients only really like that bit because it's the bit that's pertinent and useful.
Sending us some challenges then, because we can't keep.
Well, that's the same problem that you have in your group, isn't it? Is that people don't send in problems; they stay quiet about problems. And actually, yesterday I had to say to a client, the client that sent the rave review, come more often, even when you think you haven't got something to talk about. Because Michael Neal always used to say to me, those are the best ones.
Yeah,
because they're spacious. Yeah, they're spacious. It gives you room to breathe and think, and for stuff to bubble up.
Yes, so perhaps we'll call it Own It Social section or something, and just talk about whatever we feel like we want to talk about.
And some weeks we may have a challenge. We might call it not so much challenge, which is a word I loathe, by the way, but topic of the week or focus of the week or what have you...
I like focus of the week. Let's try that.
Yep, okay.
Okay, so
it's not about client necessarily, it's focus of the week. It's anything you've noticed that you want to talk week, but it'll still be hard because at the moment it's your turn to come up with this on episode 156. It's hard, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
We could freestyle it for a couple of weeks and see if that works.
Yeah.
I
tell you what, it could be.
Or do you know what we could do? We could shorten the whole thing, so we don't have to try and fill an hour. We could shorten it to,
45 minutes, half an hour, whatever. Yeah.
Well, last week was 45 minutes. Sometimes it's 45 minutes when we run out of things to talk about. And I mean, I tell you what the difficulty is if I think what we're both doing in bringing things to discuss under the various sections, whether it's client challenge of the week or not, is that some weeks one has a dull week where nothing very interesting happens and you can't talk about it. In other weeks, you have weeks that are packed full of stuff. You can't wait to talk about it. It's hard, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And, I don't know, yeah. I do love it, and I love the fact it's creating content. I love the fact we're doing a podcast, and I'm very proud of it. But I can't keep looking at these graphs that are stationary or static, thinking, why aren't they getting bigger?
Well, I wonder whether this might help you to know. If you can't keep looking at them and you want to stop doing it, that would be fine by me. It might be liberating just to know that, a bit like me falling over and not damaging myself. It might be freeing if you knew, for me, it's not about performance necessarily. I don't think it'll change your worldview because you are quite driven and you do want the hockey stick and you are focused on results. So maybe just take the pressure off for a bit. Or let's just keep it constantly under review. Let's get to Christmas and see how we feel. We've actually, both of us said it out loud now for different reasons, which is, where are we headed with this? We're coming to the end of our third year, which in itself is no bad thing.
Well, I know. I mean, I'm very proud of the consistency. I just not that I want to finish. I want it to grow, and I don't understand why it isn't. I tell you what it is. It's happening.
And I think you're right. We've got to look at promotion then. Unpaid, because I'm not prepared to pay for promotion ever, as you know. No. But we've got to look at a marketing plan for the podcast, and we'll do that. And I recommended that about 6 weeks ago, but we never made the time for it. We need to do a brainstorm, the two of us, off podcast, where we look at marketing initiatives. I could do it on Friday, by the way. I've got a client at 11 o'clock in the morning, UK, if you want to do it on Friday, or even Saturday during the daytime at a pinch. We just brainstorm. So for instance, a bit like me saying today, I'm just going to write every day on my Facebook page throughout November. And when I did the blogging every day for 365, if we just pick the things that we can do easily and do them every day rather than box ticking, we can measure whether that makes a difference or not.
Yeah.
If you go and look at that chap's, what he says he's doing. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I think what's happening is it's tapping into my thing where I feel that, that disappointment thing where I didn't used to set goals because of fear of being disappointed. I feel disappointed with the podcast performance in terms of growth. And I don't like feeling disappointed, especially when I think we're doing something.
Although look at that growth. Look at that graph you're showing me now. Forget the two yellow lines. Imagine that was grass. In the first third of that graph, the grass is low. In the second 2/3, it's higher with peaks.
Yes, it's definitely double higher, isn't it, than it was?
Yes.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, and actually what we're reminding the listener and ourselves is how long anything takes to get traction.
Yeah, well, it's 2 years, we say, don't we? We haven't got any.
Well, three. And we are coming towards the end of our third.
We can't have been doing it for 3 years.
We have. This is episode 156, and there are 50 episodes a year.
That makes 3 years.
Yes. Yeah, that makes 3 years even by your maths. Yes, it does.
I mean, we are still
in
the what's hot chart in the
UK. A bit ahead is you made me do, sorry. The reason we're a bit ahead is you made me do a dozen episodes before we launched, if you remember, or something like that, because we needed them in the bank to make it look whatever you need to make it look to iTunes. Carry on with what you're saying about what's hot.
Well, I was just saying we are still in the top 100 what's hot of UK, but we don't move no matter what.
No, and that doesn't seem to do us any good either. Maybe people aren't going. I've never in my life been to iTunes and looked at charts and thought, what podcast will I listen to today? Oh, I'll go to the What's Hot in Management and Marketing. It's just something I've never done. I don't believe other people do it either.
Well, I think people go on the other, other people listen to, if you listen to this, you might like that kind of thing, the thing they suggest at the bottom.
Okay, but that's only for iTunes users, you see, and I never really do that. And people often send me other podcasts. I don't really listen to other podcasts.
Yeah. Okay, I'll go and have a look and see what Tyrone did to explode his listenership, and we'll talk about that next on Friday then, probably. But yeah,
or even next week. I don't mind making this section about what we're going to do to make this podcast work or stop between now and Christmas.
Yeah, I think we'd have to go to 200 episodes because that would be nice and round, a nice round figure. When would that
3
be?
years works for me. 3 years works for me as well, Nicola. 200 would be another year, 4 years. Then you're already depressed.
Well, I'm not depressed. I'm only depressed this week. I'm not depressed every week. Most of the time, I'm very bullish about this podcast, but I just feel a little bit because everyone's been talking about it in one of my masterminds about their podcasts, and it just pisses me off that we're still at. So
you're falling for that thing all of my clients fall for, which is comparisonitis.
Yes, I know.
I never compare myself to another living soul. I couldn't give a shit what they're all up to.
Well, I'd like a few downloads more.
We get good downloads. We reach more people through this podcast than we've ever reached individually or collectively through any other medium.
Yeah, I know. And I am very proud of the content. I think, it is great content. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and there's not actually many that I would listen to this one because I think, we are as good as some of the others I listen to, and I can't understand why we haven't grown. So that's
clearly then popularity isn't about goodness or quality, I beg your pardon. I think we could improve the quality quite a lot. I think we're a bit bash bosh, actually. I think it could be shorter. I think it could be more focused. Basically, it's two women chatting, and if people aren't interested in that, it's not interesting.
Yeah. I kept hoping, I suppose, for someone with a big following to have a listen and like it and share it. But that hasn't happened in 3 years.
That would only give us a one-off surge. That would only give us a one-off surge unless they converted into subscribers.
Yeah, which one would hope they would.
I would imagine it was quite a small percentage, 5 or 10 perhaps would.
Possibly, yeah.
I think it's about podcasting and being ahead of the curve. That's why I'm saying let's call it a radio show. People don't really know what podcasting is still.
Okay, well let's start talking about it as a radio show then, because it sounds more glamorous anyway. Well,
50-50, sometimes we call it a podcast for those that understand what it is. And I've got a category on my blog where I post our notes, which is radio show, because I had it there from Blog Talk Radio in the past. Yeah. It is radio in a way, isn't it?
Yes, and I think the other thing I'm going to do is make it more of a feature on my menu, my top menu on my website. Not that my website gets massive amounts of visitors, but it might make a difference. You never know.
I can also use, not now, but after Christmas, I can use one of my 22 social gates for our page. We said we were going to do away with our page. Anyway, we'll review that when we have our chat.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So let's move on now, because that's it.
Right.
To word of the week.
I'm going with a word which I think is one of the finest words ever created, and indeed it was created. It's whispernet, which is the thing on Kindle where your pre-ordered whodunits just magically download in the middle of the night.
Oh, it's so exciting.
And when you wake up in the morning, as yesterday, the new Michael Connolly, Harry Bosch, is there.
Oh, see, I need a new person, Harry Bosch.
No, Michael Connolly, Connelly, who also wrote The Lincoln Lawyer. Harry Bosch, we're on about book 22. I've been reading them since before. I mean, I've read all of them.
Like your recommendations. So
they're set in LA, and they're incredibly readable. They're just page turners. There's no. Well, I was going to say they're not quality, but actually anything that sells in large numbers is quality.
Well, some people would argue against that.
I learned this in my wine tasting. Mathias Rosé, Sound of Music, anything that's popular and sells in big numbers is high quality. If it was rubbish, it wouldn't.
Yes, well, I don't know, because I read some Martina something or other novel the other day, and it was...
I draw the line at Martina Cole, I agree. But go and have a look at Michael Connolly's Facebook page as well, because I always follow the author pages of the book of the whodunits, because they do... I'll tell you why you'll like that. They do fabulous marketing for their own books throughout the year whilst they're writing them.
Very good. I will go and do that, because I need a new series to do. I've just been reading a Patricia Cornwall, and it's so well written. But it's so miserable nowadays. I mean, I'm not talking about the serial killers. I'm talking about the actual characters interacting with each other. They're so miserable all the time.
Well, I tell you what I like about Harry Bosch, and then he's on Amazon Prime if you want to watch a few of his. They've turned him into a series as well. No, he's not. He's on Netflix. Anyway, he's on the telly as well these days. Only 2 or 3 of them, and short series they are, 10 episodes. He's an LAPD cop. And a bit of a rebel, and he's about my age now, so he's retired and farmed out, but they brought him back to do cold cases, and he was a Vietnam vet, and he's a maverick, he's all the qualities I like.
Usual stuff.
Anyway, my word of the week is Whispered. What's yours?
Research, because of my aforementioned lovely day spent wandering around Wikipedia, clicking links at random, and by some synchronicity coming up with the things I needed to be able to move this novel forward. So it was absolutely brilliant.
I did send you a message, didn't I, on that there saying, on a PM saying, are you there? And you said, yes, I'm doing research for my book.
Yes, on a phone, away from the
You still can't or won't tell us what it's called, will you, or will you?
Well, I haven't got a name for the actual first book yet, but I have got the Taurus trilogy is where...
Oh,
and it is...
Taurus is my birth sign,
No, really?
Yes.
Well, that's spooky, isn't it? Anyway, the Taurus trilogy, Taurus. I've got a Facebook page for it. URL.
T-O-U-R.
No,
That's not my birth
Taurus.
sign. T-O-R-U-S. Okay, that's not my birth sign then.
No, I know what your birth sign is. Taurus.
But you've got very nice alliteration there, which is always good.
Yes, it is. Unfortunately, there is apparently a Taurus trilogy in the fantasy world, but not in the science fiction world yet. It's all right. I'm not downcast about it. It's going to be completely different. And I've got a page for it, and I'm going to be adding, as I write bits, I'm going to be adding them to the page, so you can follow along with the writing of a novel in public, if you like. What else? So just how much I don't enjoy research normally. I find it very dull, but this kind of research was much more fun. So that's my word of the week. Project update. What have you got for that?
I've got very little to report this week because I can't do anything on my book until the foreword is written, and he can't start that until the 8th, which is a week tomorrow. And he said the week commencing 8th, so that could be 8th to 15th, 8th to 16th. So I'm 2 weeks away from being able to give it to the man who's going to turn it into an ebook and do all of the, setting, and I've decided I'm going with my cover, but I like my cover. I don't think he likes my cover, but tough. Some of my NaNoWriMo content will be about it at an attempt at pre-publicity, which is something I'm reading about in a book that I'm reading for and with a client. Quite a worthy book. I'm struggling to read it, as you'll have read this morning. But yeah, not much to report. Can't move forward on the book for a couple of weeks.
Oh, that's teaching patience, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, and our project updates about the podcast we sort of covered in the focus section, didn't we? Yeah.
But I'll just my biggest project at the moment is the workshop in between Christmas and New Year, which is it's going brilliantly. I'm absolutely astonished how I've sold out all the early bird places before the early bird period even finished. And now we're on to
yes, you said that last week.
Yeah, covered all the costs of it, and anything now is profit, and I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to teaching the content, and I might even do 3 a year, as I probably said in another podcast. So I'm looking forward to weaving that into my business plan for next year.
Just out of interest for people that run workshops, is it Hilton Gatwick?
No, I'm going to our old favourite, the Holiday Inn.
Holiday Inn Gatwick. And are they making you, are they giving you a flat rate? I'm not asking you the rate. Are they giving you a flat rate for the room, or are they making you pay a day delegate rate?
No, they offered me a choice. I could mix and match my requirements, or I could just pay a flat day delegate rate, which was very reasonable, and I went for that. Because you know me in detail, I'm not interested.
I like a day delegate rate, actually. Yes,
and they've even said that if the room expands, they've got another room with natural daylight that we can go into if we need to. So they're being
marvellous, because of course they've got a dead zone between Christmas and New Year as well in their conference section, haven't they?
That's what I was banking on. It turns to be true. Very nice chap called Lito helping me out there.
Okay.
Okay, so finally, who or what's impressed?
Well, as I said earlier, I struggled on this one. And what I've come up with in the end is self-employed parents who juggle at half term, because we're on the second week of half term in England, and manage a bit of everything, or those who compartmentalise and only do work or only do holiday. It doesn't matter to me, as my friend Susie from Manchester says, it doesn't matter to me which route you pick, as long as you have a strategy that you can live with. So big up to self-employed parents at half term.
Yeah, absolutely. I met up with Kate Cocker, my client. She came to Stupa for the week with her husband and children, and she's trying to finish a documentary while her kids are playing on the beach. And I thought, God, I mean,
I know. It's juggling, isn't it?
Yeah, it is juggling, but she's got no choice. This documentary came out of nowhere is it Capital Radio 1, I think it is. So it's a big job. And it's interesting. She's following 3 kids through coming out of the care system and how creativity is making a difference to their lives. Which sounds like a rather nice topic. Right, what's impressed me is my ex-husband this week. Now, I never thought I'd hear this myself say this in public, but there you go. We're having conversations about the kids between us as well, and he's actually being very reasonable, and he's letting Nelson pack in this job that he hates, and he's being we're pretty much on the same page really, that while he wants them to be earning and obviously contributing if they can, but he's perfectly willing and understands that they need to take time to find out what they really want to do. So I've been very impressed with his attitude, especially as they're living in his house, not mine.
I think that is an impressive attitude, and I think it's the sort of attitude I want to see in a parent in 2017. I don't think the rocket up the bottom does any good because it's a bit draconian. You want to encourage and support whilst having requirements about contribution when they're earning.
Yeah. And, especially in view of the fact that he worked in his dream industry for years and then he got to a point where he couldn't anymore. Because, so he's being very generous, I think.
Yes, I agree.
Encouraging Nelson down the musical route.
I've always liked your ex-husband, actually, so I'm not surprised to hear that. No, he's a good chap.
Well, I like him now too. So.
Yes.
And you couldn't ask for more, could you really?
No. I mean, that's ideal, isn't it? Yeah. If you can end up in this marvellous arrangement where you're talking in a more than civilised way and appreciating each other when your children are in their early 20s, that is a result.
I know. I'm very proud of that.
Yeah, well done you.
Good stuff. All right. Well, hopefully we haven't brought our listeners down this week, and any messages of encouragement, support or suggestions for marketing this podcast would be gratefully received at the private podcast group on Facebook, which you'll find by typing in Own It, the podcast, and looking in the groups.
And I will link to it in the show notes as well.
Thank you very much, Judith. Speak to you soon.
Okay, see you soon. Yeah. Bye.
You've been listening to Nicola Cairncross and Judith Morgan. The podcast is called Own It, Your Business and Your Life. Do come and visit us at ownitthepodcast.com. We'd love to hear your feedback. You can find out more about Judith and visit her on her website at judithmorgan.com, and you can find Nicola at nicolacairncross.com.